What's up, everyone? Tera Roberts here with Fantasy Alarm, and we are talking free agency deep cuts for Week 18. Before we dive in, it's been a rough week in football, but everything is continuing as planned for Week 18, and many of you still have games going on, so as always, we are here to help. But my thoughts and prayers are with Damar Hamlin and his family. I know we're all very encouraged by the positive news that's coming out about him. With all that said, let's go ahead and dive in and talk some free agency deep cuts. At quarterback, this is definitely not a lock, but if you're looking for a deep league option, Mike White does have a good matchup against a Miami team that has given up the second most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. He is still dealing with an injury, so keep your eye on that. But the Jets should have ample opportunities on offense because this could be a very difficult game for Miami with Skylar Thompson most likely leading the way. White is a risky start because he is prone to interceptions and not always productive with his volume. But Week 18 is a scary week for quarterbacks, and White might just be your best option. Now, there are a couple of teams that are more than likely going to sit starters, or at the very least limit them. And one of those teams is the New York Giants. It's tough to imagine that Saquon Barkley plays a full game this week, and that means that Matt Breida will likely see an increase in snaps. The Giants play Philadelphia, and that is definitely a tough defensive draw, but the Eagles are more vulnerable against the run than they are against the pass. The Giants could lean on the run in this matchup regardless of the outcome. So if you're looking for a volume play, Breida could be your guy. Another option is Jaylen Warren versus Cleveland. Warren has definitely been a hit or miss type of player. He's fairly involved for a backup running back, seeing between 30 to 40% of snaps over the past month. And he's coming off an excellent game with 12 carries for 76 yards and 3 receptions for 22 yards. Cleveland is one of the best matchups for running backs. Najee Harris will still obviously lead the way, but the Steelers are likely going to push enough volume to make Warren relevant, and against the Browns, he could definitely get upwards of 10 fantasy points. At wide receiver, let's start off with a 2-for-1 special. Excuse me, I am a little bit sick. 2-for-1 special with Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins. James and Hodgins are both excellent options, and I don't think that you can go wrong with either one. I prefer James, but if James is unavailable, Hodgins is a very similar comp in terms of productivity. Now I know what you're thinking. Tara, didn't you just tell us that the Giants are going to be resting starters? Yes, I did. But James and Hodgins should still see a solid amount of work regardless, because the Giants don't really have any other options at receiver behind James, Hodgins, and Slayton. Kenny Golladay hasn't received a single target since Week 11. Marcus Johnson's last target was in Week 8. James and Hodgins should still see targets and a decent amount of playing time, even if it's just 1/2 this week, to make them relevant enough to be a flex option. But if you're a little bit worried about playtime for James and Hodgins, you could go the opposite direction with someone who could see increased playtime this week, and that is Russell Gage. Tampa Bay is another team that could rest starters, and unlike the Giants, their receiving core is huge. The Bucs could opt to sit Godwin and Evans, and Russell Gage would be the big beneficiary. Gage has been productive when given the opportunity. He just rarely gets the opportunity. But a matchup with Atlanta is the perfect opportunity for Gage to step in and be a deep league flex option. Now, given the state at tight end, I'm surprised Juwan Johnson is so low rostered. He's had bad performances here and there, but for the most part, he's been a lock for double-digit fantasy points in PPR. You do need to monitor his status because he's dealing with a quad injury, but provided that he's active, he is an interesting option. Johnson has a total of 7 touchdowns on the season, which puts him right behind Travis Kelce and George Kittle. And since his emergence in Week 17, he has averaged 11.2 fantasy points per game in PPR. That's a solid tight end one. It's tough to find a player capable of putting up those kind of numbers on waivers, so grab him if you need him. But in case Johnson isn't an option, you can go with Trey McBride. McBride isn't my first recommendation because the matchup is awful, the quarterback situation is sketchy, and the offense is literally falling apart by the day. But McBride plays 80 to 90% of snaps and is coming off a 7-reception game for 78 yards and a touchdown. And with DeAndre Hopkins out, he should still continue to see increased opportunities. He's a solid option. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to Fantasy Alarm, and good luck with your lineups this week.